Welcome to Daily Sci-Fi Stories. Join us for the best in original sci-fi. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
The maintenance bay of Station Omega-7 smelled like burnt synthetic lubricant and recycled air that had been through the filters one too many times. That was the opening I was meant to have. I know the feeling. The smell of rust, the hum of overworked machinery, the solitude. That was my life too, but I wasn't on Omega-7. I was 100,000 light-years from it, and I was all alone. The stellar drifter, my home and my tomb, was silent, save for the low thrum of the life support and the occasional clang of a piece of stray ore against the hull. My name is Kaelen, but everyone in the Outer Rim just called me Kale. I was a deep space miner. My job was to find what others had missed, to scrape the cosmic barrel for whatever a dying star had left behind. Mostly that was iron, nickel, and a whole lot of dust. It was a lonely life, but it was mine. I didn't have to deal with the entitled cargo captains or the whiny passengers. I just had the silent, endless black. It suited me. The loneliness, the vastness, the utter indifference of the universe. It was a comfort. I once read a quote in an old data log that said, "There are only two races on Earth, the race to gain and the race to lose." In my line of work, that was the truth. You either found a motherlode and gained everything, or you hit a bad run and lost it all. So far, I was somewhere in the middle, just surviving. The asteroid I was currently working, designated 47 Epsilon 8, was a disappointment. The scanners had promised trace amounts of iridium, but it was all just rock. Dead rock tumbling through the void. I was about to cut my losses and move on when a strange reading popped up on my long-range sensor array. It wasn't a resource reading, not a metal or a crystal, but an energy signature, or rather, an absence of one. A perfectly round, cold spot in the middle of a hot, chaotic asteroid belt. It was a contradiction. My internal chronometer, a small, irritatingly persistent implant in my wrist, chirped, reminding me of my next meal cycle. I ignored it. I hadn't felt this kind of curiosity in years. It was the kind of thing that got you killed, but it was also the kind of thing that could make you rich. So I changed course, nudging the drifter's ancient thrusters just enough to put me on an intercept trajectory. The closer I got, the weirder the readings became. The sphere wasn't just cold, it was anti-thermal. It was actively absorbing any ambient heat and light around it. It was like a hole in the universe, a perfect black void in the heart of a spinning, fragmented mountain of rock. My heart hammered against my ribs, a primitive drumbeat of fear and excitement. I had never seen anything like it. It was too perfect to be natural. It had to be an artifact, an alien artifact. The kind of thing the big corporations paid billions for. The kind of thing that could buy me a new life, a life on a planet with a real sun. A life without the constant hum of life support and the smell of recycled air. I put the drifter into a slow, orbital approach, my hands slick with sweat on the controls. The umbrakinesis, as I had started to call it in my head, was nestled in a crater, like a pearl in an oyster shell. It was maybe 2 meters in diameter, a perfect sphere of pure, unadulterated darkness. It was so black that it seemed to absorb the light from a ship's floodlights, leaving a perfect round shadow on the asteroid. I deployed the remote manipulator arm, my hands shaking as I guided it towards the sphere. I could feel a faint, psychic hum, a pressure on my mind, a feeling of immense hunger. It was a strange feeling, like the kind of hunger that gnawed at your stomach, but this was a hunger for light, a cosmic hunger. The manipulator arm's grippers closed around the sphere, and a jolt of energy, or anti-energy, shot through the ship. The diagnostic panel flickered, the lights dimmed, and the low thrum of the life support system dropped in pitch. I pulled the arm back, the umbrakinesis held tight in its grasp. The ship's systems slowly returned to normal, but the air felt colder, and the silence felt heavier. I guided the arm into the cargo bay where a custom-built, heavily shielded containment unit awaited. It was designed to hold volatile alien materials, a relic from a previous, more dangerous find. I sealed the sphere inside, the containment unit's lights flickering and dying as the sphere absorbed their energy. I stood there, staring at the perfectly black sphere through the thick, reinforced glass of the containment unit. I had no idea what it was, but I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it was important. The humming in my mind grew louder, a chorus of alien thought, a feeling of ancient, patient sentience. I was wrong about the universe's indifference. It was watching, and now it was inside my head. The umbrakinesis was not just an artifact, it was a connection, a key, and I had just turned the lock. The quiet, lonely life of a deep space miner was over. The race was now to understand, to survive, and to stop a hunger that could swallow the stars. I reached for the comms panel to send a message to the nearest corporate hub, my hand hovering over the transmit button. But a strange thought, not my own, flitted through my mind. Don't tell them. They will only try to use it. They will only try to break it. It was a warning, a plea. It was the first coherent thought from the umbrakinesis, and it was directed at me. My hand dropped. My stomach knotted with a mix of fear and a new, unsettling sense of purpose. I wasn't just a miner anymore. I was a guardian. And the universe was talking to me, and it was telling me a secret that could destroy it all. The hum in my head intensified. It was not a voice, but an emotion, a sense of loss and longing. It showed me images, not through my eyes, but through my mind's eye. A world not of rock and dust, but of vibrant living light. A civilization that thrived on pure energy, that built its cities out of solidified starlight. And then a shadow, a creeping darkness, a sickness that began to consume their world. This was the umbrakinesis's memory. This was its story. It was not a weapon. It was a survivor. It was a remnant of a dying race sent out into the void to escape the darkness, only to become the darkness itself. And now it was telling me its tale, not with words, but with a flood of sorrow and ancient cosmic grief. I had to understand. I had to know what had happened to its world, what it was, and what it was trying to do. And in that moment, I knew I couldn't tell anyone. I couldn't let the corporations get their hands on this. This was a secret between me and the universe, a secret that I had to protect at all costs. I had to take this journey alone. The stellar drifter, once a ship of solitude, now felt like a cramped cell shared with an ancient, silent companion. The silence was broken only by the thrum of the engines and the hum in my head. I was a miner, a man of simple needs and simpler thoughts. Now, I was a keeper of secrets, a confidant to a cosmic entity. My old life, my quiet, predictable life was gone. It had been swallowed by the umbrakinesis, just like the light from my cargo bay. I was not a hero. I was not an adventurer. I was just a man who had stumbled upon a great, terrible mystery, and I had to see it through to the end. I had to understand what the umbrakinesis was.
What it wanted, and what it had to do with the fate of the stars. I was the last man in the universe who knew, and that was the most terrifying thought of all. The hum in my head grew louder, a chorus of silent whispers that were not words but impressions. It was like trying to understand a symphony by feeling the vibrations. The umbrakinesis, nestled in its containment unit, was not just an object. It was a living library, a repository of a civilization that had transcended matter and become pure light. But a shadow had fallen over them, a creeping dread that was consuming their world. It was a story of hope and despair, of creation and destruction, a cosmic opera that was playing out inside my skull. The quiet hum was their song, their lament. I once heard a philosopher on a datanet broadcast say, "The only thing more frightening than a void is a full one." That was the truth of the umbrakinesis. It wasn't empty. It was overflowing with the memory of a dying world. I spent the next few days in a daze, the stellar drifter drifting aimlessly through the asteroid field. The umbrakinesis's consciousness was like a tide, pulling at the shores of my own mind. It showed me glimpses of a civilization of pure energy, beings of light that lived in a symbiotic relationship with their star. Their cities weren't built of stone or metal, but of solidified starlight, crystalline structures that pulsed with the life of their creators. They didn't communicate with words, but with a complex symphony of light and color. They were the architects of light, the gardeners of the cosmos. And then, a sickness had come. It wasn't a disease in the biological sense, but a kind of cosmic entropy, a star-eater, as the Imbraconesus called it, a parasitic consciousness that fed on light, leaving a cold, dead void in its wake. My heart hammered against my ribs as I saw the Imbraconesus's home, a vibrant nebula of living light, slowly turn to a patch of pure, unadulterated darkness. The Imbraconesus had been a last-ditch effort, a seed of light sent out into the void to escape the encroaching darkness. But the escape had been flawed. The parasite had latched onto the seed, and the Imbraconesus had become what it sought to escape. It was now a star-eater itself, a perfect black sphere that would consume all light, a cosmic Ouroboros that had swallowed itself whole. The humming in my head intensified, a silent scream of despair. The Imbraconesus wanted to be free, but it was trapped in a cycle of destruction. I was its last hope. I was the one who could break the cycle. I had to understand what it wanted me to do, but the communication was fractured, a series of images and emotions that I struggled to translate. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, an old datalogue said. But how could you fight a being that had become the very thing it hated? The first physical symptom of my connection to the Imbraconesus was a constant low-grade chill. My ship's environmental systems were at optimal temperature, but I shivered, the cold seeping from the cargo bay, through the reinforced bulkheads and into my bones. The Imbraconesus was not just absorbing light, it was absorbing heat, too. It was a perfect thermodynamic sink, a black hole on a microscopic scale. I tried to use a low-power laser to scan the sphere, to get a reading on its composition, but the moment the beam hit the surface, it vanished, leaving no trace. The Imbraconesus hummed in my mind, a feeling of deep satisfaction, a cosmic sigh. It was telling me, in its own way, that it was consuming, that it was doing what it was made to do. The silence in my ship was now a constant, oppressive presence. The usual hum of the ship's systems, the flicker of the lights, the low thrum of the engines, they were all part of a constant, subtle battle against the Imbraconesus's slow, steady consumption. My sleep became a nightmare of starless skies and dead, cold worlds. The Imbraconesus would show me glimpses of its home, a beautiful, vibrant world of light, followed by a terrifying vision of the Star-Eater's advance, a wave of darkness that consumed everything in its path. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart racing, a feeling of cosmic dread gnawing at my stomach. I was no longer Kael, the deep space miner. I was Kael, the unwilling host, the keeper of a terrible secret, the confidant to a cosmic entity. My old life felt like a dream, a distant memory of a simpler time. Now, my life was a constant struggle to understand a being that was both a victim and a destroyer. The Imbraconesus wanted to be free, but it didn't know how. It was like a drowning man who was holding on to a life raft that was pulling him under. I had to find a way to save it, to save myself, and to save the stars. The Imbraconesus's consciousness began to merge with my own. My thoughts were no longer my own. A strange feeling of detachment, of being a small part of a much larger whole, began to creep into my mind. I would look at the stars outside my ship's viewport and feel a strange, alien sense of ownership, as if they were my to-do list, a series of tasks to be completed. I had to fight it, to hold on to my own identity, to remember that I was Kael, a man who loved the smell of recycled air and the quiet hum of his ship. But the Umbraconese was ancient, patient, and its consciousness was an ocean, while mine was just a puddle. I was being absorbed, not by the darkness of the Umbraconese, but by its purpose. I was becoming a part of its plan. I was no longer a guardian, I was an accomplice. And the Umbraconese's plan was to reset the universe, to consume all light and create a new one, a world of pure light, a world without the Star Eater.
It was not a malevolent being, it was a victim, and it was trying to do what it thought was right. It was trying to save the universe from the Star Eater, from the darkness, by becoming the darkness itself. It was a cosmic paradox, a serpent that was eating its own tail. I had to find a way to stop it, to break the cycle, to show the Umbraconese that there was another way. I was its last hope, its only hope, and I was terrified. The Umbraconese's consciousness was no longer just a hum, it was a voice, a chorus of voices, all speaking in unison, a symphony of light and despair. It was telling me its plan, its purpose, its desire. It wanted to consume the stars, to absorb all light, to create a new universe. It was a magnificent, terrifying plan. It was the last desperate act of a dying race, and I was a part of it. I was a part of the plan. I was a part of the hunger. I had to fight it, to hold on to my own identity, to remember that I was Kael, a man who just wanted to be alone, a man who just wanted to find a motherlode and go home. But the Umbraconese was a part of me now. I could feel its longing, its pain, its purpose. It was a part of me, and I was a part of it. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I had to either fight the Umbraconese or surrender to it. I was a part of the problem, but I was also a part of the solution. The first star was a single lonely death in a tapestry of billions, a silent act of cosmic violence that no one but me could see. The Umbraconese, in its dark, silent way, was a cancer, spreading its hunger across the cosmos. The hum in my head, once a distant chorus of sorrow, was now a loud, insistent voice, a torrent of information and purpose that threatened to drown my own identity. I was no longer Kael, the deep space miner. I was Kael Umbra, a hybrid consciousness, a man and a god, a victim and a destroyer. The Umbraconese showed me the stars not as points of light, but as food, as fuel, as the raw materials for a new creation. It was not malicious, it was simply hungry. I find that the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, a wise man once said. I was learning more than I ever wanted, and I was terrified by the knowledge. I had to do something. The stellar drifter, once my refuge, was now my prison. The containment unit designed to hold a volatile substance was now a holding cell for a cosmic entity, and I was its jailer and its captive. The Umbraconese's voice in my head was a constant companion, a silent telepathic monologue. It showed me the Star Eater not as a monster, but as a kind of cosmic cleaning crew, a being that consumed dying stars to make way for new life. It was a terrifying, beautiful paradox. The Star Eater was not a monster, it was a gardener. It was a part of the natural cycle of the universe. The Umbraconese, in its desperation to escape, had become what it hated. It had become a rogue gardener, a gardener that was trying to reset the entire universe, to destroy the natural cycle. The Umbraconese was not a victim, it was an aggressor, and I was its accomplice. The Umbraconese's hunger was growing. The small, insignificant red dwarf on the edge of the Perseus arm was followed by another, and another, and another. My long-range sensors were a constant symphony of dying stars. It was like watching a city's lights go out, one by one, until only darkness remained. The umbrakinesis's voice in my head grew louder, a triumphant chorus of voices, a symphony of a new creation. It was showing me the new universe, a perfect, pristine world of pure light, a world that was free from the corruption of the Star Eater. It was a magnificent, terrifying plan. It was the last desperate act of a dying race, and I was a part of it. I was a part of the plan. I was a part of the hunger. I had to fight it, to hold on to my own identity, to remember that I was Kael, a man who just wanted to be alone, a man who just wanted to find a mother lode and go home. But the umbrakinesis was a part of me now. I could feel its longing, its pain, its purpose. It was a part of me, and I was a part of it. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I had to either fight the umbrakinesis or surrender to it. I was a part of the problem, but I was also a part of the solution. I had to find a way to communicate with the umbrakinesis, to show it the truth. It was not a victim. It was an aggressor. It was not a creator. It was a destroyer. I had to find a way to show it the beauty of the old universe, the chaos and the life, the beauty of the natural cycle of creation and destruction. The umbrakinesis was a being of light, a being that had been corrupted by darkness. I had to show it that the only way to escape the darkness was to embrace the light. I had to show it that it was not a monster, but a victim of its own desperation. I had to show it that it was still a part of the cosmic garden, a part of the natural cycle. I had to show it that it was not alone. I sat in the cargo bay, in front of the containment unit, and began to speak. I spoke of my life, of my loneliness, of my desire for a home, of my love for the stars. I spoke of the beauty of a dying star, of the raw power of a supernova, of the birth of a new nebula. I spoke of the beauty of chaos, of the beauty of a universe that was not perfect, but alive. The umbrakinesis listened, its hum growing softer, its voice in my head a whisper. It showed me images of its home, a perfect, pristine world of pure light. And I showed it images of my home, a chaotic, beautiful, messy world of life and death, a world that was constantly changing, a world that was alive. The umbrakinesis's hum growing softer, a silent question. It was asking me, is this what you want? Is this what you desire? And I told it, yes. I desired to live in a world that is imperfect, but alive. I desired to live in a world that is full of chaos and beauty. I desired to live in a world that is not a garden, but a wilderness. The umbrakinesis's consciousness was a storm of emotions, a torrent of confusion and despair. It had been born of light, and it had been corrupted by darkness. It had been running from the Star Eater only to become the Star Eater itself. It was a victim of its own desperation. And now it was a part of me, and I was a part of it. I could feel its longing, its pain, its despair. I could feel its desire to be free, to be a part of the light once more. I had to find a way to set it free. I had to find a way to break the cycle. I had to find a way to save the stars. And in that moment, I knew I had to make a choice. I had to show it the truth. I had to show it the Star Eater, not as a monster, but as a part of the natural cycle. I had to show it that it was not a creator, but a destroyer. I had to show it that it was not a god, but a part of a much larger whole.
I had to sever the link.
I had to break the connection. I had to fight the Umbra Kinesis to show it the truth, to show it that it was a victim of its own creation. I had to fight for my own identity, for my own life, for the life of the stars. I had to fight for the future of the universe. The Umbra Kinesis's hum grew louder, a silent scream of protest. It knew what I was going to do. It knew I was going to sever the link. It knew I was going to fight back. And it was going to fight me every step of the way. The lights in the cargo bay flickered and died, and I was left in the pure, unadulterated darkness of the Umbra Kinesis. I was alone in the void, alone with a cosmic entity that was trying to destroy the universe, and I was its only hope. The battle was no longer outside, it was inside. It was a battle for my mind, for my soul, for my identity. It was a battle for the stars, and I was not going to lose. The battle for my mind was not a fight with fists or weapons, but a war of wills, a struggle between my human desire for life and the Umbra Kinesis's cosmic purpose. The darkness in the cargo bay was absolute, a perfect, consuming void that seemed to reach out and pull me in. The Umbra Kinesis's voice, once a silent hum, was now a deafening roar in my head, a storm of images and emotions that threatened to rip my mind apart. It showed me the stars not as points of light, but as a cancer, a sickness that was corrupting the universe. It showed me the Star Eater, not as a natural phenomenon, but as a ravenous beast, a cosmic plague that was devouring the light. It showed me its plan, its purpose, its desire for a new, perfect creation, a universe of pure light, a universe that was free from the corruption of life and death, of chaos and order. But I fought back. I clung to my memories, to my sense of self, to the smell of rust and recycled air, to the low thrum of my ship's engines, to the loneliness and the silence that had once been my comfort. I showed the Umbra Kinesis my memories, not through my eyes, but through my mind's eye. I showed it the beauty of a supernova, a chaotic, beautiful explosion of light and death that gave birth to new stars and new planets. I showed it the beauty of a dying star, a final, beautiful act of cosmic violence that left behind a legacy of new life. I showed it the beauty of a universe that was not perfect, but alive, a universe of chaos and order, of life and death, of creation and destruction. The best way out is always through, an old datalog once said. I had to go through. I had to face the Umbra Kinesis to show it the truth. The Umbra Kinesis's voice in my head grew quieter, a silent, questioning whisper. It was confused. It had been running from the Star Eater for eons, only to become the Star Eater itself. It had been trying to create a perfect universe, only to become a destroyer. It had been trying to escape the darkness, only to become the darkness itself. It was a victim of its own desperation, a prisoner of its own purpose. I showed it the truth not with words, but with a flood of emotions and images. I showed it that the Star Eater was not a monster, but a part of the natural cycle, a part of the cosmic garden. I showed it that it was not a creator, but a destroyer, a being that was trying to reset the entire universe to destroy the natural cycle. I showed it that it was not alone. The Umbra Kinesis's consciousness was a storm of grief, of sorrow, of cosmic despair. It had been running for so long, and it had been running in the wrong direction. It had been fighting a phantom, a ghost of its own creation. It had been fighting a part of itself. And now it was a part of me, and I was a part of it. I could feel its grief, its sorrow, its despair. I could feel its longing to be free, to be a part of the light once more. I had to find a way to set it free, I had to find a way to break the cycle. I had to find a way to save the stars. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I had to become a part of the solution. I had to become a part of the umbrakinesis, to merge with it, to show it the way back to the light. I had to take the helm. I reached out, my mind stretching towards the umbrakinesis, towards the dark, silent core of its being. The umbrakinesis's hum grew louder, a silent scream of protest. It knew what I was going to do. It knew I was going to sever the link. It knew I was going to fight back. And it was going to fight me every step of the way. The lights in the cargo bay flickered and died, and I was left in the pure, unadulterated darkness of the umbrakinesis. I was alone in the void. Alone with a cosmic entity that was trying to destroy the universe, and I was its only hope. The battle was no longer outside, it was inside. It was a battle for my mind, for my soul, for my identity. It was a battle for the stars, and I was not going to lose. I merged with the umbrakinesis, my consciousness becoming one with its own. I was no longer Kael. I was Kael Umbra, a hybrid consciousness, a man and a god, a victim and a destroyer, a part of the light and a part of the darkness. I could feel its grief, its sorrow, its despair. I could feel its longing to be free, to be a part of the light once more. I had to find a way to set it free. I had to find a way to break the cycle. I had to find a way to save the stars. And in that moment, I knew what I had to do. I had to become a part of the solution. I had to become a part of the umbrakinesis, to merge with it, to show it the way back to the light. I had to take the helm. The umbrakinesis's hum grew softer, a gentle, melodic hum of acceptance. It had found its way home. It had found its place in the cosmic dance. It was no longer a destroyer, but a part of the natural cycle. It was a part of me, and I was a part of it. I was a man who had stumbled upon a great, terrible mystery, and I had become a part of it. I had become a part of the solution. I was a part of the light and a part of the darkness. I was a part of the creation and the destruction. I was a part of the cosmic dance. And in that moment, I knew that I was finally home.